Hello, and welcome to Exposition, a podcast produced by the Division of Social and Human Sciences, Northeast Campus, Tarrant County College. Prepare to be engaged, enlightened, and informed. Today's topic.
Today's topic is the movie The Patriot. This is Dr. Karen Wisely, along with
Samantha Elkins.
And we are going to talk about The Patriot. This is the first in what we hope will be a continuing series. I chose The Patriot as the first movie because it is a movie that a lot of history professors have a lot of passionate opinions about, mostly negative. So the log line of this movie, that is the general outline of what it is peaceful farmer Benjamin Martin is driven to lead the colonial militia during the American Revolution when a sadistic British officer murders his son. It stars Mel Gibson, Australian, Heath Ledger, Australian, Chris Cooper from Missouri, and Jolie Richardson, British, as the main American colonists. I'm just saying, were there no American actors available? I don't understand this. The British are portrayed primarily by Jason Isaacs and Tom Wilkinson. I like to note where these people have been famous before, because I always spend a good portion of the movie trying to figure out, where did I see that guy before? So Mel Gibson is the guy who most famously recently has gotten drunk and become anti-Semitic. Also, he starred in Braveheart, which hopefully we'll do in this series at some point. Heath Ledger is the man who played the Joker in The Dark Knight, but he was also in A Knight's Tale, Brokeback Mountain, and my personal favorite, 10 Things I Hate About You. Heath Ledger, of course, passed away tragically not too long ago. Well, it's probably been 10 years, but
oh gosh,
it feels like yesterday. Chris Cooper is in a great movie called Seabiscuit, which I'm sure none of you have seen, but all of you should. Jolie Richardson was Vanessa Redgrave's daughter, still is, I guess. And Jason Isaacs, Lucius Malfoy in the Harry Potter series. And he's just as big a jerk in this movie, right?
Definitely.
Tom Wilkinson has been in a million things, none of which probably anyone has seen, but Michael Clayton is the best one that I identify him with. He usually plays a bad guy.
So once again, kind of
a
little bit of typecasting here.
A little bit, yeah. And he is actually British, because they hired British people for the British parts, and also for the American parts. So
I guess we should mark one side is historically accurate, one side not quite as historically accurate. Just looking at
just based on that alone, yes, that's true. So all right, so Samantha, you put together some questions because you did your homework. So what kind of questions came up with this?
Oh man, the real big ones for The Patriot, of course. And if you've listened to our previous podcast, we've talked all about, what role does movies play, and is it necessary for them to be historically accurate or not? But of course, the big question is, looking at The Patriot, what about it is not historically accurate, and what is historically accurate?
Yeah. So I guess we should start with the not accurate part first, and then we'll go to the redeeming qualities.
Try to end on a high note, maybe?
Yes. Let's do that. Yes.
I should put high in quotations.
Yeah. I mean, it's all relative. So what are some of the worst, terrible historical inaccuracies in this movie.
Oh, man. So I'm going to mention two very vaguely, and then we can go into the details. But the two that are the most problematic, in my opinion, are dealing with race and slavery. And then the portrayal of the British with the Revolution. Those are the two that just I can't shy away from at all.
Yeah, the race one is so, well, first of all, unnecessary.
Mm-hmm.
And just so badly done.
Yeah. It really doesn't add anything except for it feels like it's trying to do the whole we have to make our protagonist 100% a good guy. So they just took all the historical accuracy of some South Carolina planter would have had slaves.
Mm-hmm. Not free black men just working for him.
Yeah, that were totally chill with that and
for
wanted.
Funsies.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
I mean, that scene in the movie, it just, every time it comes up, we're like, we're not slaves. I'm like, what? No? What? No. Like, no. And it feels like it's trying to be like, oh no, the Americans had to be 100% good and the British had to be bad, so we had to make the slaves, who weren't really slaves in the movie, but we're all rolling our eyes at that. Yeah. We had to make them want to stay on the American side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, even the racist guy in the militia, right? Mm-hmm. The one who's like about the black guy that was with them. First of all, the black guy wouldn't be with them. It's a South Carolina militia.
They would not have armed him.
No circumstances, whether it was a free black man or what, they are not arming a black man.
Yeah.
So
you do have, I should say, in the North, there are some free black men that serve in the Continental Army, so to speak, and everything. A lot of times doing the most menial jobs and stuff like that, but not in the South.
No, and George Washington was adamant about that because he knew the problems that would arise with it if they were to, even a free black man, give them arms in the South. It wasn't going to happen. So that, in and of itself, that man who's there, who's like, if I serve, and he was a slave. He was an enslaved person because if he served 12 months, was it? Then he got,
I can't remember,
yeah, I think it was, he had to serve 12 months, and the racist guy in the militia was like, you're not going to serve even 3 months, and all of this. And then by the end, of course, and spoiler alert.
You might get the scene at the end where he turns to him.
And he's like, it's been an honor to serve with you. and it was just, oh my God, cheese. So cheesy.
Yeah.
And 100% historically inaccurate because that man would not have been in that militia. And,
Yeah, no, most of, I mean, if you look at the Revolutionary War and you're talking about like the southern states, it was really a war to keep slavery. Like a lot of the Southerners were not necessarily for breaking away from the British until the British were like, oh, we'll free enslaved peoples if they come join our side. Yeah. And suddenly the Southerners are all on board because they're like, no, we want to keep our enslaved peoples. We want to keep the system of labor. So it was kind of like literally doing the opposite of the reality.
Yeah. So that's a fairly glaring historical inaccuracy, I would say. And as you said, to make the protagonist like the good guy, and we can't have any gray areas here. He has to be either all good or he is evil.
Yeah.
And so it's very simplistic, and I kind of wonder how much of that was Mel Gibson, like, I can't have any slaves in this movie. And it's like, dude, that's, your guy would have. Yeah.
Well, and give more credit to the audience so they can understand the nuance that I think it would have been a better film if they had made him not be 100%, you know, like the perfect man, so to speak. Like, oh, he's still mourning his wife. Spoilers. That died previously. Okay, I should just say there's tons of spoilers in this.
And also, I mean, that is like literally in the first minute of the movie, you learn that his wife is dead. So it's not like
a big spoiler, but okay.
Like get to the end and be like, what? His wife is dead. No,
if you haven't watched The Patriot yet, go ahead and pause this and go watch The Patriot. And then come back.
And then come back and listen to this, yes. But, yeah, and this is the part that kind of, like, I don't know, struck me. That we want him to be the perfect good guy. Yeah. And yet, what in the heck did he do in the wilderness campaign during the French and Indian War?
Yeah, so they already were trying to give him nuance, being like, oh, yeah, I hacked up these bodies and blah, 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 and scalped these men. And
it was like...
So you already tried to give him nuance. Like, why couldn't you have given him historically accurate other nuance?
Yeah. So I was like, okay, so he isn't the perfect man, then, is he?
No.
He's got some demons.
But watching the film, to me, like, when I've been, like, watching it recently and talking about it with people, it feels like this whole American exceptionalism that, yes. And it feels very akin to, it's okay if the good guy does bad things because he's doing it for the right reasons. And so it's like, and that kind of goes into, like, the British problem. They make the British out to be evil. But in many ways, our main character, Mel Gibson, he does some of the same exact things that the British do in the film, that he's shooting people in the back and literally, like, sometimes it's just really ridiculous, like early on when he's hacking a guy with the hatchet, the tomahawk, and just, and you're going, okay, well, wait a second. Somebody else just did that like 10 minutes ago and they were the bad guy.
Yeah.
But now that you're doing it, it's okay because you're doing it for the right reason. You know, revenge. And,
yes.
Yeah.
Because, spoiler alert, his son was murdered. Well,
yeah. Well, yeah.
Maybe two of them.
Yeah, maybe a couple of them. And, yeah. So I guess we should talk then about the British and how problematic their portrayal is. Which we should mention that generally, after this movie came out, it came out in 2000. It generally received pretty positive reviews. So audiences,
a pretty popular movie.
Yeah. It's funny because talking to people, my husband mentioned, he was like, it felt like almost a spiritual sequel to Braveheart a little bit, just like Mel Gibson fighting it on his own. And
I frankly am surprised when he grabbed that flag in the final thing and started running that he didn't make the speech about they can't take away our freedom or something, you know. And but it is very akin to that, and you know, ginning up this strong patriotic, I guess, feeling that might in you know, if we're talking about doing bad things for the right reasons, might dip their toe into nationalism a little bit, you know. But it's So we want to be anti-British in the 2000s. Was there? I don't think there was anything going on in the 2000s that we were like, those Brits.
Yeah, and so that's the funny thing is, like, looking at the reviews. All the reviewers generally liked it, except for all the British reviewers hated it because it was super anti-British.
Yeah. They had, like, no redeeming qualities.
None. Like, we talk about, like, Mel Gibson being, like, the perfect man. Then, what's his name? That's Lucius Malfoy. Or
Jason Isaacs.
Yeah, like, he has to be the exact opposite. Like, he has nothing redeeming about him. I mean, he shoots, okay, so yeah, obviously spoilers. He shoots Mel Gibson's son in the back.
His 15-year-old son.
Yeah. And never mind the son, Thomas, is being an idiot in that moment. But, like he shoots him in the back and everything, and it's just like, are you serious? Like, just shooting at point-blank range like a kid in the back that wasn't really going to... at all be a threat to you.
And that's not even the worst of it, because the worst of it is when he locks an entire village of citizens in a church and then sets the church on fire, which didn't happen in the revolution. You know when it happened? It happened during World War II.
Yeah.
When it was the Nazis doing it.
So we literally are making the British out to be the Nazis in this movie.
Yes.
Which is extremely problematic, because that is not historically accurate at all. No, it's killing me, because I kept being like, no, the British were more something than that. And I couldn't come up with this term last night. And finally found it. They were more self-disciplined than that, because they were a professional standing army. And actually, you could make the argument that the British Army, if anything, was too hesitant, especially at early parts of the war.
Yeah, when they were being harassed and
Yeah. They didn't want to alienate the American colonists, because they're trying to defeat the American colonists to bring them back into the British Empire. So you don't want to be just randomly shooting people in the back and burning up villages and a church, and that's not going to go over well.
No, and there's considerable conversation between Tom Wilkinson's character and Jason Isaacs' character. Tom Wilkinson plays Lorne Cornwallis, and he is over the higher ranked than Jason Isaacs, which is Tavlington, I think.
Tavington.
Tavington. And so he, at first berates him very harshly about the atrocities that he is committing, and how there's been a lot of complaints about shooting prisoners and all of this. And then later in the film, after Cornwallis's dogs have been stolen
by Mel Gibson, because after 2 days they decide they like Mel Gibson better than Lord Cornwallis.
Who wouldn't? Yes. After his dogs were stolen, then Lord Cornwallis went back to Tavington and was like, "Go ahead, do what you got to do."
Yeah, he even laughs about it. I think in the last field of battle or something, he's like, we'll get them. Yeah, we'll kill them all. Jeez. I also love the fact that the dogs go to Mel Gibson's character, just to be like, oh, in case you weren't sure that Mel Gibson was the good guy, and
dogs
these British
love him.
The dogs love him. I'm like, which there's nothing to show that does this guy not like his no, there was no the dogs were well cared for. Why would they? Yeah, I don't know.
I guess we could quibble and be like, why were your dogs traveling separately from you? But hey, I know dog people. That's not something that would happen. The dog would be right there with them.
Oh, yeah.
But, yeah.
I can't help but think, because I did Boston Massacre this week, and there's the picture and the dogs in the middle being shot at by British troops. And I'm just once again, just in case, killing people isn't evil enough, we have to, really...
Yeah. And killing people never does seem evil enough, but add a dog.
There you go.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So those are the biggest historical inaccuracies, and there are others, by the way.
Oh yeah.
We don't want this podcast to be 6 hours long, so we're just going to go with the big two. Let's then look at the other side. What are some of the redeemable qualities about this movie?
Once again, setting. Setting does it. I will say they did their research when it came to things like, you're looking at the uniforms. You're looking at there's a really early on battle scene. I say early on. It's a 3-hour movie. Let's be honest. It was probably an hour and a half into it. There's a battle scene that you're watching kind of from above. And you see the British marching forward in their lines, formations and everything, and just withstanding withering fire, literally falling down dead left, right, and center, but just keeping at it. And that was the expectation with professionally disciplined soldiers at that time. And you see that the Continental Army, on the other hand, is kind of falling apart a little bit. And so those aspects, and the guns, and you see all the smoke on the battlefield and everything. It really does give you a sense of kind of like how these battles were fought, especially the battles that would win the war. Because everyone always likes to do like, oh, guerrilla warfare. And like, why wouldn't they do that? And I'm like, that makes sure you don't lose, but that doesn't make you win the war. These are the battles you need to win in order to actually win. So I'll say, like, I'll give them credit there.
Yeah.
Was there anything else that you were like in particular like, oh?
Well, I mean, I feel like we would be remiss if we didn't mention the cannonballs bouncing all over the field. and one particular scene where it bounces and takes a man's head clean off. Which
So I shouldn't laugh, but it is really overtly like.
It was unexpected. Let's say unexpected.
Yeah.
It like really, it was kind of shocking. It was like, did not think that was going to happen. And then it did. And then you had to come away from it wondering why. Why did that need to happen? I mean, I guess that, it's true that cannonballs bounced around like that and did inflict damage on people. But why did it have to take his head off?
It feels almost like the Patriot took like, oh, let's do the historical accuracies to an unnecessary point. Like, even they're messing up like the historical accuracies because it's like, okay, seriously, you went that far? Like, good on you, I guess, for being historically accurate on the battlefield. But why did I need to watch a guy's head literally just be taken clean off with a cannonball? Which, by the way, the movie is R-rated. So.
And I feel like statistically, that probably didn't happen that often.
Probably not that cleanly, I will say.
I mean, and so it seemed excessive to me. But you have that R rating, and there really wasn't swearing, so
No.
I guess it had to be blood and gore and
random phrases by the kid at the beginning and stuff like that.
That was the one that was like. That was something that really got me is the child. And it's not the 15-year-old. This kid was like 11 or something. And you could hear he was at home with his brothers and sisters and his father and their friends that just worked for them even though they weren't enslaved. And they were eating dinner, and you could hear the cannons off in the distance. And this little boy, like 11, says, we men are going to have to fight, or they're going to kill us.
Yeah, they're going to kill us.
And then he looks at his sister, who, I don't know, is 5 maybe, and says, and God only knows what they're going to do to you women. And I was like... What? I don't think that kid knew what they would do to those women. And I don't know that they were going to do it to that 5-year-old. And so, but I don't know where he got that phrase. It's just so weird.
Yeah, it felt like needlessly like graphic for the sake of being graphic and gritty, like, yes. Here I am as an 8-year-old and
I understand the miseries of war. Yes, all of them, even though I don't really know what any of this means. I know it's going to be bad for you guys. So, they played up to that R rating. They had to work for that R rating. They got that R rating. They deserved that R rating. So let's finish this off by saying, what would you recommend this movie to students?
I wouldn't necessarily recommend it to students. Unless I was telling them, watch it, and I want you to pick out the inaccuracies, because that's kind of fun, honestly. We've been laughing this whole time at some of it, because it's so ridiculous. So it's kind of like, you could technically be like, I'm going to assign you this, and I want you to find the things that are wrong with it. Mm-hmm. Because there's so many, that we didn't even list here and everything. Yeah. So I could say that. If I'm just saying in a general sense, if somebody like is like, oh, I just want to watch a gun-ho like good guy versus bad guy movie, and I want to imagine myself, what's that really famous movie that, Die Hard. Like if I want to watch a Die Hard-esque movie, then in that case, okay, The Patriot is very much that kind of category of movie, just set back in the Revolutionary War era. What about you? Would you recommend this to students or not so much?
Well, my students love my class because I recommend they always watch movies. I do see some redeeming qualities about this, and what you said about the method of fighting, that and that being just as gritty as possible was really is what I think is the takeaway from this movie. Again, it's a thing where it's like the plot. Does he, does Mel Gibson and his sister-in-law need to hook up? Does Heath Ledger need to marry that woman only to have her burned in the church? It's just the plot is blah, but the setting and the grittiness of the battlefield is, I think, it gives worth to this movie.
Yeah, it gives that context, which is sometimes hard to really visualize when we're just talking about it.
Right. Yeah. You could talk for days about how they fought battles, but seeing it is worth 1,000 words.
Yeah. And that sounds like a really good place to kind of end off on. So
It does. All right. Well, thank you for listening. This has been Expositions.